Hello! You're about to embark on another section of the Google Business Intelligence Certificate. This is wonderful! You're really seizing the day. Seize the day, or carpe diem, is a famous Latin phrase by the Roman poet Horace. He used it to express the idea that we should enjoy life while we can, maybe even taking some risks in order to live life to the fullest. More recently, the acronym YOLO, or You Only Live Once, is a common way of expressing the same idea. Interestingly, the original phrase, you only live once, was intended to send a completely different message. The earliest instances of such quotes in English literature were actually more of a warning. Their connotation was that life is precious, so we should use good judgment, be careful, and protect ourselves from risk of harm. This is a great example of a well-known concept being taken out of context. But lots of other things can get taken out of context too, including data. As a refresher, context is the condition in which something exists or happens. If you earned your Google Data Analytics certificate, you learned a lot about context and how it helps turn raw data into meaningful information. If you'd like to review those lessons, please go ahead and do so before moving on to the next video. It's very important for BI professionals to contextualize our data. This gives it an important perspective and reduces the chances of it being biased or unfair. During the next few lessons, we will re-examine context from a BI context. Then we'll move on to some other data limitations, including constant change and being able to see the big picture in a timely manner. I'll also share some strategies BI professionals use to anticipate and overcome these limitations. And we'll learn more about metrics and how they relate to context. There's much to come, so let's seize the day and continue our business intelligence adventure. Let's try a little experiment. Think about what might happen if you showed this line chart to 3 different people. You'd very likely get 3 different interpretations. Even if they understood that line charts are used to show change over time, one person might assume the x-axis represents a few days, while another might guess it's showing a span of many years. Maybe one person would assume the 5 colored lines along the y-axis represent the sales of different products. Another may suppose they represent the purchase patterns of different customer types. The point is, a line chart with the title, a legend for the x-axis, and the y-axis, and each of the data values it contains, is a much more effective data visualization. When you clearly indicate the meaning of each item by giving them context, suddenly this line chart can be easily understood by others. Context helps eliminate the risk of misinterpretation. This saves your stakeholders time and ensures they have accurate information to make data-driven business decisions. As you likely know, in data analytics, context turns raw data into meaningful information. When you contextualize, you put something into perspective. This involves considering its origin and other relevant background information, the motivation behind it, the larger setting in which it exists, such as a particular time period, and what it might have an impact on. Contextualization gives something greater meaning to help people understand it more completely. This also supports fairness and reduces the chance of bias when your users seek to gain useful insights from the data you're presenting, which brings me to context in a BI setting. In BI, there's another aspect of context that professionals care about a lot, and that's contextualizing the tools we create for our users. One key practice that promotes context is to put the data being shared in a central location. Typically, this would be a well-designed dashboard. Then, the second step is ensuring there's a common method for everyone to interact with that dashboard. It's important for stakeholders to be able to easily understand, access, and use the dashboards you create. This way, people don't have to go elsewhere or switch context in order to find the information they need. And that empowers all users to be much more effective in their work. For example, let's say a company's finance team needs a dashboard to analyze costs across the entire company. So you design a dashboard that shares key insights about each department's particular spending. But then, what if it turns out that the operation department's costs are revealed to be unusually high? The finance team would want to be able to take a deep dive into that department's spending in order to figure out the root causes of the cost increase. So it would be important to iterate on your dashboard so it includes supporting information about each department as well. Another part of building an effective solution is prioritizing the cross-functional relationships that exist within your organization. It's necessary to consider how the BI work you're doing aligns with overall business objectives and how it will be used by your colleagues. For instance, if your new BI tool will monitor 5 different metrics and be used by 10 different stakeholders, it's important to consider how each user will access and interpret the data. Basically, to make an effective dashboard, it's necessary to first understand how each particular stakeholder will actually use it. And by taking the time to think this through, you ensure that you create one robust dashboard rather than many less effective ones. Also, because you've created a single accessible shared dashboard, this allows for some great collaboration among users. For instance, that finance team member may be dismayed by a seemingly small 5% year-over-year growth number. But the salesperson can put that number into context by pointing out that 5% is actually a good result and higher than expected, given that the market segment as a whole was experiencing a 10% decline. The salesperson can provide that specific market's context, whereas the financial analyst would likely only be aware of broad industry trends. A single dashboard output can bring about countless insightful conversations. Expressing results contextually helps you confirm that you're using the right data for the stakeholders. You'll also know that it's in the correct format. It can be effectively used and shared, and the results make sense. This boosts people understanding, and as a result, the ultimate business benefits. In a previous lesson, you were introduced to some of the solutions in the Business Intelligence Professionals Toolbox. They include data models, pipelines such as ETL, data visualizations, and dashboards. These are all powerful and exciting solutions, but only if they have relevant, timely, consistent, and bias-free data to work with. This concept is known as data availability. Data availability describes the degree or extent to which timely and relevant information is readily accessible and able to be put to use. Unfortunately, there are various factors that can affect data availability, and therefore can compromise the integrity of BI solutions. In this video, we're going to discuss some of those challenges, as well as ways to address them. First, some of the most common data availability issues involve integrity. If you earned your Google Data Analytics certificate, you know that data integrity involves the accuracy, completeness, consistency, and trustworthiness of data throughout its entire lifecycle. Typical issues related to data integrity include duplicates, missing information, inconsistent structure, or not conforming to business rules. If you'd like to revisit the lesson about data integrity, feel free to do that now. Then come back to this video when you're ready. The second data availability challenge has to do with visibility. Data visibility is the degree or extent to which information can be identified, monitored, and integrated from disparate internal and external sources. For instance, employees working in a company's operations department might have no idea what data is stored in the communications department. Or someone working in the logistics unit might have data files that contain lots of great information, but no one else even knows they exist. Now, on the other hand, when you do have clear data visibility, it's possible to achieve accurate and timely insights and really improve your organization's responsiveness and agility. To achieve these goals, BI professionals will often work with their colleagues to create a list of data repositories for stakeholders. You can request a short interview with the data owners or ask people to complete a quick online survey about the data they collect and use. This is a simple but very useful exercise to discover the kind of data that is available. Also, keep in mind, data visibility challenges don't just exist within a company's four walls. Sometimes BI professionals are unaware of very useful external data. As you may know, there are countless free public data sets, including government research, climate, energy, and healthcare studies, industry surveys, and lots more. All of these can contribute to a successful BI project. The third data availability factor to be aware of is update frequency. Oftentimes, BI projects will involve multiple data sources. It's very common for disparate sources to refresh at different times, such as weekly versus monthly. Let's say a business intelligence professional works for a pet supply manufacturer based in Brazil, and maybe they analyze product sales volume by city. If a retail partner moves from Rio de Janeiro to Sao Paulo in the middle of July, all of that month's sales would fall under Rio, simply because the partner's address hasn't been updated yet in the BI system. So either the retailer's data needs to refresh sooner to match sales data, or the manufacturer should look at all data on a monthly basis. This is why it's important for the BI professional to understand how the update frequency of different data sources can affect insights. Even if individual data sources are perfect, the integration aspect is often pretty messy. Now we've come to a fourth data availability challenge, change. Change is a constant in pretty much every aspect of our lives, and data is no different. Data availability may be affected because of a change to internal procedures, such as a system update or a new record-keeping process. It may change externally because of a user interface upgrade or an adjustment to a particular algorithm. To address this issue, BI professionals must have a plan for how they will keep stakeholders up to date on changes that might affect the project. So they should encourage team members to think about what tools or methods they're using now, what could change, and how it may influence the data being tracked, and how to fill any potential gaps. Data availability is an important consideration in the field of BI, and you're likely to spend a fair amount of time working to address data availability factors. This video provides an introduction to some of the most common issues you'll encounter, but there are other things that can affect the availability of data. Therefore, it's important to be realistic about the level of quality you're aiming for. For many projects, good enough is sufficient. Just be sure to acknowledge the limitations and constraints if you take that approach. As with so many things, it's difficult, if not impossible, to achieve perfection, and that's okay.
My name is Meghna, and I'm a business intelligence analyst. There are several types of biases that an analyst can deal with in regular life: confirmation bias, selection bias, historical bias, and outlier bias. Confirmation bias occurs when an analyst is either exploring or trying to interpret data to confirm with their prior beliefs. This can happen at any stage of data analysis, while gathering data for analysis, while actually doing exploratory analysis, or while interpreting the data. Selection bias can occur when we are dealing with samples which are not representative of the entire population. This can happen organically when we are dealing with small data sets or when the randomization process has not happened. Historical data bias happens when socio-cultural prejudices and beliefs are mirrored into systematic processes. For example, if manual systems give poor credit ratings to a specific group of people and an analyst uses this data to feed into automated systems, this automatic system is now going to either amplify or actually mirror these prejudices into the results. Finally, talking about outlier bias. Averages are a great way to hide anomalies and outliers while skewing our observation. Data integrity practices are very important to avoid bias in data. There are few tips or things that have worked for me while I've done my analysis and tried to avoid bias. First one is record all my prior beliefs and assumptions before I start my analysis to actually be cognizant of the fact that I do have these preconceived notions about the data or the process. Second is to use a highly randomized set of data to actually use data which might be more representative of the analysis than being just convenient. Third one is to gather more data and do more research about the opposite side of your hypothesis so that you are not really ignoring that part or you're not really focusing on the thing that you believe should be the outcome of your analysis. And the last one, a very important one, is to be cognizant of outliers. When the average analysis says things are looking good in the data, I think it is time to dig more into the data to understand nuances.
Vanity is an interesting word. If you look up vanity in the dictionary, you'll discover that it can mean both excessive pride and something that is empty, futile, or without value. It's intriguing to think that we can be proud of something that matters very little. But this does happen sometimes, especially when it comes to business metrics. In fact, those of us in business intelligence have a term for this phenomenon: vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are data points that are intended to impress others, but are not indicative of actual performance and therefore cannot reveal any meaningful business insights. A well known vanity metric is the number of people following a company on social media. Maybe there are hundreds of thousands of followers, but how many of them are actually making a purchase? How many of them refer other customers to the site? And how much revenue do they actually generate for the business? Showing off a number just because it's big rarely accomplishes much. And that's why it's critical to ensure each metric you monitor is productive, informative, and effective. For example, some useful business metrics might include a restaurant's customer loyalty rate, a manufacturing team's productivity levels, a fitness center's monthly profits and losses, or the amount of inventory in a pharmacy's warehouse. These are numbers that can lead to useful business insights. When determining which metrics to include on a dashboard, BI professionals consider four key things. First, more information is not necessarily better. Your stakeholders will appreciate it if you limit the number of metrics on your dashboards by including only those that are critical to project success. Do this by thinking about user requirements, what users already know, and what they need to learn to help them meet those requirements. Too many metrics, especially irrelevant or unnecessary metrics, can confuse people and devalue your dashboard. Next, make sure metrics are aligned with business objectives. Consider your organization's specific goals. Then pinpoint which metrics can be used to support them and measure success. Confirm that the necessary technologies and processes are in place to obtain and analyze the data you need for each metric. This is another time to think about all the factors related to data availability. Avoid vague or super high-level metrics. Instead, they should be clear and precise enough to inform a particular action. The SMART methodology can help you identify the key metrics for the particular issue at hand. As you may know, this tool helps determine a question's effectiveness. However, it can also help you refine metrics based on whether they are specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and time-bound. If you earn the Google Data Analytics certificate, you learn about the SMART methodology. Feel free to review that lesson before moving ahead. As a final point, it's wise to identify the most important metric first and prominently display it at the top of your dashboard. Then, supporting metrics can drill down into the details below. For instance, when making a dashboard for a tomato farm, you might put the number of tomato pallets shipped at the top because total sales is a key metric. Then, the data that supports pallet shipments, such as worker productivity and the efficiency of the harvesting machines, would be displayed underneath. In addition, your users will appreciate it if you group related metrics together. So for our tomato farmer, that would mean placing sales data in one section, production insights in another, harvest rates in another, and so on. Keep in mind that the best metrics highlight two key things: how the organization is doing and what decision makers should focus on. In other words, they ensure your dashboards are never created in vain. And just like that, we've reached the end of another section of this course. You are discovering so much about business intelligence. I'm really excited for you, for how far you've come, and for everything that lies ahead. I hope you're equally inspired and motivated to keep making great progress. At this point, you've gained valuable knowledge about some of the most essential elements of BI. You learned about context and how it can help people avoid mistakes, save time and effort, and confirm that data is accurate and fair. Context is also important when creating BI tools, as it enables users to collaborate and share information that helps make business metrics more clear and comprehensive. You also explore the concept of data availability and why it's so important in maintaining the integrity of BI solutions. and you continued to investigate metrics, as well as the strategies that BI professionals use when deciding which metrics to include on a dashboard. Soon, it will be time to apply your BI skills to a scenario-based project for your portfolio. You will create your own approach to the example situation and consider how you would complete each task at your company. This will be an invaluable tool during your job search. As always, I encourage you to make the most of the discussion forums. Sharing ideas and questions is a wonderful way to tap into the world of BI. But first, you have another graded assessment. Once again, be sure to check out the reading that lists new glossary terms, and take all the time you need to review videos, readings, and your own notes. Awesome work, and I can't wait to be with you again soon. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to discuss data integrity and some risks you might run into as a data analyst. A strong analysis depends on the integrity of the data. If the data you're using is compromised in any way, your analysis won't be as strong as it should be. Data integrity is the accuracy, completeness, consistency, and trustworthiness of data throughout its life cycle. That might sound like a lot of qualities for the data to live up to, but trust me, it's worth it to check for them all before proceeding with your analysis. Otherwise, your analysis could be wrong. Not because you did something wrong, but because the data you were working with was wrong to begin with. When data integrity is low, it can cause anything from the loss of a single pixel in an image to an incorrect medical decision. In some cases, one missing piece can make all of your data useless. Data integrity can be compromised in lots of different ways. There's a chance data can be compromised every time it's replicated, transferred, or manipulated in any way. Data replication is the process of storing data in multiple locations. If you're replicating data at different times, in different places, there's a chance your data will be out of sync. This data lacks integrity because different people might not be using the same data for their findings, which can cause inconsistencies. There's also the issue of data transfer, which is the process of copying data from a storage device to memory, or from one computer to another. If your data transfer is interrupted, you might end up with an incomplete data set, which might not be useful for your needs. The data manipulation process involves changing the data to make it more organized and easier to read. Data manipulation is meant to make the data analysis process more efficient, but an error during the process can compromise that efficiency. Finally, data can also be compromised through human error, viruses, malware, hacking, and system failures, which can all lead to even more headaches. I'll stop there. That's enough potentially bad news to digest. Let's move on to some potentially good news. In a lot of companies, the data warehouse or data engineering team takes care of ensuring data integrity. Coming up, we'll learn about checking data integrity as a data analyst. But rest assured, someone else will usually have your back too. After you found out what kind of data you're working with, it's important to double check that your data is complete and valid before analysis. This will help ensure that your analysis and eventual conclusions are accurate. Checking data integrity is a vital step in processing your data to get it ready for analysis, whether you or someone else at your company is doing it. Coming up, you'll learn even more about data integrity. See you soon.
Now that we've talked about 6 basic problem types, it's time to start solving them. To do that, data analysts start by asking the right questions. In this video, we're going to learn how to ask effective questions that lead to key insights you can use to solve all kinds of problems. As a data analyst, I ask questions constantly. It's a huge part of the job. If someone requests that I work on a project, I ask questions to make sure we're on the same page about the plan and the goals. And when I do get a result, I question it. Is the data showing me something superficially? Is there a conflict somewhere that needs to be resolved? The more questions you ask, the more you'll learn about your data and the more powerful your insights will be at the end of the day. Some questions are more effective than others. Let's say you're having lunch with a friend and they say, "These are the best sandwiches ever, aren't they?" Well, that question doesn't really give you the opportunity to share your own opinion, especially if you happen to disagree and didn't enjoy the sandwich very much. This is called a leading question because it's leading you to answer in a certain way. Or maybe you're working on a project and you decide to interview a family member. Say you ask your uncle, "Did you enjoy growing up in Malaysia?" He may reply, "Yes." But you haven't learned much about his experiences there. Your question was closed-ended. That means it can be answered with a yes or no. These kinds of questions rarely lead to valuable insights. Now, what if someone asks you, "Do you prefer chocolate or vanilla?" Well, what are they specifically talking about? Ice cream, pudding, coffee flavoring, or something else? What if you like chocolate ice cream but vanilla in your coffee? What if you don't like either flavor? That's the problem with this question. It's too vague and lacks context. Knowing the difference between effective and ineffective questions is essential for your future career as a data analyst. After all, the data analyst process starts with the ask phase. So it's important that we ask the right questions. Effective questions follow the SMART methodology. That means they're specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and time-bound. Let's break that down. Specific questions are simple, significant, and focused on a single topic or a few closely related ideas. This helps us collect information that's relevant to what we're investigating. If a question is too general, try to narrow it down by focusing on just one element. For example, instead of asking a closed-ended question like, "Are kids getting enough physical activities these days?" ask, "What percentage of kids achieve the recommended 60 minutes of physical activity at least 5 days a week?" That question is much more specific and can give you more useful information. Now, let's talk about measurable questions. Measurable questions can be quantified and assessed. An example of an unmeasurable question would be, "Why did our recent video go viral?" Instead, you could ask, "How many times was our video shared on social channels the first week it was posted?" That question is measurable because it lets us count the shares and arrive at a concrete number. Okay, now we've come to action-oriented questions. Action-oriented questions encourage change. You might remember that problem solving is about seeing the current state and figuring out how to transform it into the ideal future state. Well, action-oriented questions help you get there. So, rather than asking, "How can we get customers to recycle our product packaging?" you could ask, "What design features will make our packaging easier to recycle?" This brings you answers you can act on. All right, let's move on to relevant questions. Relevant questions matter, are important, and have significance to the problem you're trying to solve. Let's say you're working on a problem related to a threatened species of frog, and you asked, "Why does it matter that Pine Barrens tree frogs started disappearing?" This is an irrelevant question because the answer won't help us find a way to prevent these frogs from going extinct. A more relevant question would be, what environmental factors changed in Durham, North Carolina between 1983 and 2004 that could cause Pine Barrens tree frogs to disappear from the Sandhills region? This question would give us answers we can use to help solve our problem. That's also a great example for our final point, time-bound questions. Time-bound questions specify the time to be studied. The time period we want to study is 1983 to 2004. This limits the range of possibilities and enables the data analyst to focus on relevant data. Okay, now that you have a general understanding of SMART questions, there's something else that's very important to keep in mind when crafting questions: fairness. We've touched on fairness before, but as a quick reminder, fairness means ensuring that your questions don't create or reinforce bias. To talk about this, let's go back to our sandwich example. There, we had an unfair question because it was phrased to lead you toward a certain answer. This made it difficult to answer honestly if you disagreed about the sandwich quality. Another common example of an unfair question is one that makes assumptions. For instance, let's say a satisfaction survey is given to people who visit a science museum. If the survey asks, "What do you love most about our exhibits?" this assumes that the customer loves the exhibits, which may or may not be true. Fairness also means crafting questions that make sense to everyone. It's important for questions to be clear and have a straightforward wording that anyone can easily understand. Unfair questions also can make your job as a data analyst more difficult. They lead to unreliable feedback and missed opportunities to gain some truly valuable insights. You've learned a lot about how to craft effective questions, like how to use the SMART framework while creating your questions, and how to ensure that your questions are fair and objective. Moving forward, you'll explore different types of data and learn how each is used to guide business decisions. You'll also learn more about visualizations and how metrics or measures can help create success. It's going to be great.